In this edition of the Resilient Professional Podcast, you're going to learn how friendships play a critical role in being a resilient professional. We're going to unpack how Aristotle reviewed friendships and the three main types of friendships that we need to cultivate. Welcome to the Resilient Professional Podcast. Professional success really is a game of inches. You have the experience and knowledge, but you realize that professional success is more than just knowledge and experience. It's actually applying what you already know. It's about consistently applying what you know in spite of the challenges that are sure to come your way. You know, Olympians know how to battle adversity and to perform at their best, even in the midst of setbacks and frustrations. I think we can learn a lot from the Olympian mindset. It really is about the cultivation of resiliency. Physical resiliency, emotional resiliency, relational resiliency, cognitive resiliency, resiliency in each aspect of our lives. On a regular basis, we'll unpack these ideas through guest speakers and podcast material that will take you to the next level of professional success. Friends. You know, friends are pretty important. Of course, when we were growing up, our parents said the same thing. You know, choose your friends carefully. And that was something that was drilled into our brains constantly by authority figures and probably our parents as we were younger. But it's a lesson sometimes we forget. And we need to be very, very conscious of the people that we surround ourselves with, because it's the quality of the individuals that we surround ourselves with will have a profound impact on the resiliency that we will exhibit in our lives. So when we think about it, the people we spend time with shape us, they shape who we become, they influence our values and our approach to life. And if we're cavalier on this issue regarding our friendships, it can have some negative consequences. You know, Aristotle talked about this quite a bit. He wrote extensively on this issue of friendships. And he actually felt that friendships had various components and that there were various kinds of friendships. And when I came across this information about Aristotle, that was pretty interesting. When you think about the issue of friendship, it can be a pretty big deal. And I'll just give you a few examples. So when we've talked about professional resiliency in past podcasts, we've used examples of resiliency values, traits that are exhibited by resilient professionals or people. I'll give you an example. Let's say that creativity is one of the traits that resilient people exhibit. But if you have friends that, criticize your creative bent or are not very encouraging, that's not a very helpful thing to have in your life. We talk about resilient people, resilient professionals having this attitude where they may not be overly optimistic, and hopefully they're not overly pessimistic. They strike a nice balance. But I think it's good to cultivate an approach where the glass is half full, that we have a somewhat hopeful, optimistic perspective on things. Resilient people do that. But what if you're constantly surrounding yourself by naysayers, people who are grumbling all the time, have a lack of gratitude in their lives? Wouldn't that negatively affect your resiliency? Of course it would. So again, we'll get back to Aristotle. He talked about three main kinds of friendships. And I thought it was interesting that he would break it off into various categories. So he said you can have friendships of utility. I'll talk about that in a second. You could have friendships of pleasure, and you could have friendships of virtue or excellence. So what does he mean by friendships of utility? Well, often those are the friendships we have at work. We wouldn't normally choose those people to be friends of ours, but we have used our skills and abilities and come together to collaborate with those people on common goals or objectives or projects. And quite frankly, the work world, when the relationships are going well, can be a very satisfying world. It's collegial, people are respectful often, we enjoy the relationships at work. And those relationships aren't just in work context. It could be in community involvement. It could be in your church activities. It could be in boards that you serve on. It could even be on sports teams. So again, a relationship or friendship of utility. You come together with groups of people and you share common interests and goals, and you use your skills and abilities or expertise to pursue those goals. And again, those can be very satisfying relationships. Now, one of the things you find with friendships based around utility is they can be somewhat fragile. So what happens to a lot of your friendships when you leave your place of employment? It's pretty hard to keep them going, right? You leave a sports team. You leave a board that you've been serving on. So you build these relationships up, but more often than not, you don't end up continuing them. Next classification of friendships are friendships based on pleasure. And I know in my own life, I've got clients who travel quite extensively, and they have a spouse who maybe doesn't share their passion for travel, but they've got a friend that they travel with. So they travel together, they go to exotic places. Maybe you might have a friend that really enjoys movies, but you have other friends that don't. So you've got specific friends that'll go to movies with you, or out dancing, or take an art gallery. And so that's a very different category of friendships than, the friendships of utility. And so that's the second group of friends. The third group are friends that really help us with their virtues or excellence. And these are great friends to have. And ideally, they're the kind of friends that, you make them your friend once, and there's just tremendous continuity in those friendships. Do you have any friends that you may have made when you were in elementary school? And years can go by between visits with those friends because you're separated by geography or life's circumstances. But when you do connect with them, it's like you were never apart. You just get reemerged into your friendship very, very easily. And what comes with those friendships, hopefully, and it doesn't always happen to be this way, but if you have this is awesome. True friends of excellence and virtue, are brave enough to kind of walk in the danger zone with you. They're the kind of friends that encourage the best out of you. So when they see you doing things that may not be good for you, rather than just saying go for it, even though it may not be something you should be doing, they'll call you on it. They'll call you on, listen, you said you were going to do these things. These are values that have traditionally you've held to be important. You're violating these values and things that you held to be dear. Why are you doing that? And so they provide sometimes an accountability for us in our lives. Good friends of virtue and excellence, help us just to be better people. And they're great friends to cultivate in our lives. And if you want to take great strides in your life, particularly as a resilient professional, you want to try to surround yourself with people that help you to be better. And you see that with various business groups. And that really ties into this notion of fellowships. And fellowships would be where groups of people come together. You may not have friends in the fellowship, but you come together for a common purpose. In the old days, it could be guilds or craftsmen or people like particular sports or hobbies or activities. And in the business world, where it's very applicable is this notion of support groups, mentorship groups, groups of like-minded professionals who are trying to improve their skills and abilities. And sometimes you have groups that aren't in the context of work. They just want to explore the virtues and character qualities that would make them better. It could be in the area of being more punctual, maybe giving back to the community. It could be trying to get in shape. There's all kinds of virtues that people would like to introduce into their lives. So they're trying to find a fellowship of people with like-minded values to help them inculcate, to build in those virtues and those great character qualities into their life. And they'll go to find fellowships that will have people that are like-minded. And within those fellowships, you'll often find people that will become your friends. So that's, the issue of friends. I think it's a really important concept. And when I was, heard about Aristotle's work on this, I thought, well, that's really cool. We've got 3 types. Let's summarize them again. We've got friends of utility, often in work or sport. We've got friends of pleasure. And so we're doing hobbies and activities and going to movies or traveling with those people. And then friends of virtue or excellence that help us to become better people. And then when we want to try to find friends, you want to go into areas where there's fellowships of people that might have some of the same common interests that you have. And when you get into those groups, you often will find people that are very like-minded, and those might develop into friendships. This area is really critical. Resilient people and resilient professionals cultivate rich networks of relationships. It's those relationships that will help them to be strong and resilient during times of challenge and change. Well, I hope you enjoyed this installment of the Resilient Professional podcast. Again, if you have not downloaded the Resilient Professional ebook, I'd encourage you to do that. Go to the website and get a hold of that book, and it'll unpack for you a lot of different strategies to build professional resiliency. But more importantly, there's some great reflection exercises that you can go through to get a sense as to where you are currently on that resiliency spectrum, and then areas that maybe you can be working on to improve. Have a resilient day.